In the name of God, the holy and undivided Trinity. Amen. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return there until they have watered the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goes out from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, but it shall accomplish that which I purpose and succeed in the thing for which I sent it. Yep, I'm tempted to just say amen and sit down, but you know I'm not going to. Let's start there with this from the book of Isaiah. God speaking through Isaiah, speaking words of hope that I think we all need to hear. This would have been what we call second Isaiah, written during the time of the exile when the elites had been taken away to Babylon. By the waters of Babylon we sat down and wept. You know what I'm talking about. They were missing home. They were missing Jerusalem. They were missing the temple. All those things which seemed lost to them forever. But God has another plan. Funny how that works out. God has a word of hope. My word is not going to return empty, but it will accomplish that which I purpose and succeed in the thing for which I sent it. I could hear that over and over and over and over again, partly because it is comforting, mostly because I need to hear it over and over and over and over again. God works in the way that God works. Sometimes I think we are tempted to kind of pat our foot and look at our watch and say, hurry up, Lord, let's get this thing going. But God says, wait. God works in God's time. God's purpose does not go away just because we can't imagine it, just because we can't see it, just because we can't hear the good news. It doesn't mean that the Lord is just kind of like the deist imagined him, set the world up and then ran off to do God's stuff and didn't care anything more about us. God works out God's purpose in God's time and in God's way, and sometimes surprises us because we think, oh, wow, what happened there? It can only be God. We have hope, as Paul points out, that the Spirit of Christ is in us. And though this body is dead because of sin, the Spirit is life because of righteousness. I think Paul sometimes imagined there were these kind of people who didn't have the Spirit of Christ in them, and these other kind of people that had the Spirit of Christ. But then by the end of this same chapter 8 of Romans, Paul is pointing out what is remarkably good news, that not even death can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. God's work is not done. Even when we think it is, even when we can't see the end, even when we have no hope, God is still working. Every time I hear the parable of the sower, there are two things going on, I think, in my head. One is that there are all these different kinds of people, and only this one particular group bore fruit, heard the good news, and produced good fruit. And then there's the other thing going on in my head, which is the hope of Isaiah, and the hope that is Paul, and the hope that is Jesus, is that God is never done. It may look like it. Sower went out to sow, just throwing seeds. Bam, 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 bam. everywhere. Some of it fell on the path. The birds came and ate it up. Some of it fell on rocky ground and it didn't have much soil. So it sprouted. But since there was no depth, the sun withered it. Some of it fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. And other seed fell on good soil and brought forth grain 160, 30-fold. And I think it's easy to imagine that as 4 different kinds of people. But I think it's also easy to imagine that as each one of us, maybe at different times in our life. Sometimes the seed falls on the path and birds eat it up. Sometimes seed falls on rocky ground and sprouts, but there's no depth. And when the going gets tough, they skedaddle. It's easy to do that. Sometimes it falls among the thorns and the cares of this world just chokes it. Wealth, the lure of wealth, the cares of this world, and they choke it. I think there are times when each of us are focused on the lure of wealth and the cares of this world, and it's easy for us to lose sight of the fact that the seed of the gospel has been sowed in our hearts. Sometimes that seed falls within us in a place where it just, bam, takes hold, takes deep roots, and sprouts and yields 100-fold or 60-fold or 30-fold. There is always hope. There is always love. There is always grace. There is always forgiveness. And each and every one of us sometimes receive the word in different ways. But that doesn't mean, well, that's the end for you. That doesn't mean it's all over. Because, like Isaiah said, my word that goes out from my mouth will not return to me empty, but it will accomplish that which I purpose and succeed in the thing for which I sent it. There's great hope in this parable of this sower that just goes out throwing seeds. It's inefficient, isn't it? I think we would kind of, nope, we got to have our rows. We got to plant this the right way. We got to put it just here. But God is the sort of sower that just, bam, sends it all out. It's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes. God's love is so abundant. God's grace is so abundant. This new life, this new hope is such an abundant life that it gets overwhelming. But the thing is just to remember, when it feels like it's a dry time and the plants are scorched, when it feels like it's the path, God can clean it. God can get rid of those rocks. God can get rid of the thorns. God is with us always. Jesus walks along this journey with us and helps us to become, in the fullness of time, good dirt. That's the way we summed it up in Sunday school once at St. Andrews in Birmingham. Be good dirt. But the thing is, I think what we have to do is let Jesus make us the sort of place where that word can take root and can grow and can yield fruit 160 and 30-fold. And that's what Jesus does within and among us, is makes us the sort of place where the plant that is the good news can sprout and can thrive and can become an example for those around us. Yep, it is really, really remarkably good news that we proclaim. Amen.